Thank you for tuning in to another episode of How Did You Get There, the podcast where it's all about the journey. It's about the twists and turns that have brought people to where they are right now. And I'm really looking forward to having a chat with this guest. His name is Reis Armstrong. I'll tell you all the things that he's done or is doing. He's a novelist, he's a screenwriter, he's a musician, and by that, I don't mean he's just singing in a microphone now. He's in production, he's into songwriting, he's into engineering, and he also at one point did jewellery design. But Reis, what a fascinating world you live in, because you seem to be the consummate creative. How do you manage to leverage all your talents in such a way and really say, I can do all of these things, let me just do everything?
That's actually one of my battles because my mom always said to like find one thing and stick to it. But as a creative, it's just I find it very hard to do that, right? Because I find myself like having five interests at one time. So it's really just a matter of just picking and choosing which one can I do right now, right? So I may
Yes.
dedicate 20 minutes to this and then 20 minutes to that and then 20 minutes to that, so I can get at least get something done on each type of interest that I have. But it's definitely one of my battles that I really want to kind of hone in on one thing, but it's just really really difficult.
I feel as though sometimes life pushes you in the direction that you're meant to go into. And let me just backtrack a little bit because if you're listening, most of the people that I interview, I actually know personally, right? Or somebody's introduced me to them. With Reese, I was online scrolling as you do on Instagram, and I came across this post about the new College Hill that's coming out. And I'm like, oh, Tamar Braxton, College Hill, I'm in, I'm going to watch this. And then I saw your comment and I said, oh, producer, I like production, clicked on it, then ended up in a rabbit hole, just really ended up just literally cyber stalking you and saying, oh my gosh, fascinating. I love this. But you seem to be now doing more production. Is this where you
Yeah.
think your true calling is?
Yes and no. So production is definitely my bread and butter right now. Like it affords me my lifestyle that I live right now, and it allows me to kind of pour into my other passion projects. And so I'm not that I'm in it for that sole purpose, but it has allowed me to like do so many great things that I've done in the past 8 years that I've been in production. And right now, I'm what you call the independent contractor producer. So I work for other people, but eventually the end goal is to have my own production company, which I do have. It's just not like really up and running, but that's another story. Um, but it really just allows me to pay for my other passion projects, which is like the music and making my travel episodes and things like that.
So your passion is really music.
I think that I actually have just come to this realization that because I was kind of like I said, I was battling with my all of my creative projects and like my creative interest, and I realized that when I had to like sit back and think to my earliest like memories, my most memorable moments of my childhood, it always involved music, and so I was like, just do music. And so in the process of that, I was scrolling. I was like talking to my higher self, to the universe, to God, whatever you want to call it. And I was like, what should I be doing, right? Because I can do so many things, but like, what should I focus on? And so in that moment, something said, check your Facebook. So I checked my Facebook and I go to my memories, and I had a status that I had posted 13 years prior that said, I just want to make music. That's all. And to me, it was just like,
Wow.
yeah, there you go. That's the sign you was looking for. So as of now, music is like my main focus outside of my television career.
Yeah. What is it that
Yeah.
music gives to you that the other things that you do doesn't?
Ah, it just makes me feel away, man. It just gets me emotional. It when you hear like a song, for me anyway, like if I hear a song from like 10, 20 years ago, whatever time the time was, um, it always takes me back to like a very specific moment, right? And so music is,
Absolutely.
it just like I remember exactly
Absolutely.
where I was, who I was with, what was
What I was
happening,
doing, how I was
how it made me
feeling.
feel. Yes.
Yes.
And so that has always just been the most profound thing to me about music, is that the way it makes me feel. Like I feel good, especially like when I create something that came to me from the ethers and something that speaks to my soul. Because like one thing about me is like I don't create anything without intention, right? So whatever I make, whether it's music, poetry, whatever, it's always from the heart. It's always with the purest intent. And I can confidently and honestly say that whatever I put out into the world, creative wise, especially when it comes to music, that it truly did come from my heart. And I didn't put it out there if I didn't feel good about it, right? I'm not just putting out
Yeah.
things to make money. I mean, money would be a great, byproduct of it,
Yes.
but like that's not the soul. That's not my driven force.
Yeah. If then music becomes that thing that becomes your main source of income and you're really making from money from music, how do you then reconcile your commitment to keeping to being a purist? Because it feels as though that's what you are really in terms of being true to the art as opposed to being true to commerce. How will you reconcile that need to create based on how you feel as opposed to creating because you know that you can do something that will make you money?
Well, I think for me is that, once I get to a place where I can not have to continuously trade my time for money, the rest will fall into place. So, like, if let's say, for example, I have a hit work and it gives me it comes with like $1 million check. I can then take that $1 million and invest it and not have to work ever again. So I don't have to worry about, where the money's going to come because it's going to come if I invest it properly, right? And if I am smart with it. And so it's really all just about properly investing your money when you first get that big check, in my opinion,
Yeah, I love what you
and
just
let the
said
money work
because
for you.
it essentially that's what we're doing, isn't it? We're trading our time for money. And I want to get to that
Yeah,
place as well. I think the
yeah.
problem is that a lot of us don't know how to get off this hamster wheel of saying, let me do this job and in return I get this paycheck. And a lot of people
Right.
want to have that financial stability. Do you have a plan for getting there that you can share with me, please? Because I want to do that too. And to anybody else who's listening.
Yeah, so for me, like I said, production is my bread and butter, but I soon learned that it's not sustainable because you work 60 70 hours a week. That's standard, right? So the standard schedule for production is 12-hour days, 6 days a week. That's 72 hours, right? That's not including, the hours that you may not get paid that you want to clock for, right? Because you get paid a flat rate as a producer. So I soon learned that it's not sustainable because when you're not on a show, you're not making any money.
Yeah.
So for me, it was, well, how can I make money even when I'm not working? And that thing is real estate. So that's what I'm getting into now is real estate. And that way, whenever I'm not working, I don't have to be solely dependent on TV production to pay for my lifestyle. And I can still have income coming in and I can still have that time to focus on my creative passions. So that's my way out of production, and not that I would never do it again, but I don't want to have to solely depend on it either. And you unless you venture out, you will always be solely dependent on production. And that's just not how I want to live my life.
Yeah, let's talk production as well because I like production because I feel almost as though you're that little person behind the scenes, almost
Mhm,
directing the choir. So whatever the end
mhm.
product is, nobody sees me and knows that I'm there kind of waving my wand or doing whatever. But at the end, I feel as though I have this little child that I've conceived and I get to mold it and produce that end
Yeah.
products that people ultimately enjoy. And that's what I love about production. Also, I'm not in the forefront of things, so I'm not in the line of fire, right?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
For you, you've worked on, for instance, The Circle. I absolutely love The Circle.
Really
Watch it. Yeah, I love The Circle, right? I
nice.
stumbled across it on Netflix because I like anything that's more or less a strategic game, a little bit of manipulation, a little bit of
Yeah.
let me see how I can manage the outcomes. So I always used to say,
Yeah.
man, if I want to produce a show, it would have to be either something like Big Brother
Hmm.
because I just love that, or The
Yeah.
Circle. What does production of something like that look like? How involved are you in the conversations that happen, the end products that we see? What is it that you actually
Yeah.
do?
So it depends on the show. So my primary role is I'm a story producer. And there's like different
Hmm.
levels of story producer. You have like a film producer, you have a story producer, you have a senior producer, but they can all fall under the umbrella of a story producer, right? Um, and so my primary role is I'm a story producer. And so there's a story team, and that's like it could be anywhere from 6 to 8 producers who work together to make sure that we are tracking the story that's happening throughout the series. So like and every show is different. Like for example, with Survivor, there's no interaction with the cast whatsoever as far as like conversation. Like so, whatever you see, that's what you get. Like we don't
Hmm.
we're actually forbidden to talk to them, about story, about strategy when it comes to like their game. That's like very off limits. Um, but on some shows, that's like more house reality shows, like kind of chill. We can say, hey, why don't you have a chat with such and such as like to hash this issue out, right? Not even
You're
stir the
stirring
pot,
the
but just like
pot.
hash it out. No, because it's not, because it's like you have to think about it like it's a story, right? So everything has to have a beginning, middle, and end, right? So if in that story we only get the beginning and the middle, we don't have an end. There's no story. It won't make sense for
Absolutely.
you
There's no
guys, right?
story.
So
Absolutely.
so that's when I would have to step in and say, hey, we got this and this, but we still need a conclusion. What is the conclusion? Go talk to this person, give us the conclusion. So that's where we come in at. So it's not so much stirring the pot; it's just like making the story make sense and just getting all the buttons on the story. Does
Yeah.
that make sense?
And yeah, that makes absolute sense because I think there's always a lot of discussions about the extent to which reality is real. But as
Uh
you've
huh.
as you've said, if we are in our personal lives, there might be some things that we avoid speaking about, but then that
Right.
doesn't progress the story. You've got a finite amount of time to tell that story.
Right.
So you're
Exactly.
almost helping to, I wouldn't say steer, but to progress things because those
Right.
are two different things. Um,
Exactly. So it's like to keep the story moving, because if there's no
mhm.
story, there's no show, and there has to be a story. So my job is to like really make sure that we get all the buttons on the show. Like by buttons, that's like a production term. It's more like getting
Yeah.
the end result.
How do you manage the conflict between people thinking that they got a bad edit or the way they've been shown isn't the way they really are? So perception versus reality really. And I'm conscious that that wouldn't necessarily be something that you have control over if you're
Yeah.
focused on the story. But do
Yeah.
you ever watch something and think, this really doesn't do this person any favors? Or from a production point of view, you understand that every story has characters. And so everybody has a role to play.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I feel like, well, first of all, when it comes to someone's edit and how they look on television, that has nothing to do with me because I am not in post. I'm in production, so
Yeah.
I'm in the field shooting the show. I don't have anything to do with what's happening once the show ends, right? Once we call cut, that's that. My job is done, right? Um, but I think people have, I think reality TV has been around long enough for people to understand what can happen in an edit. Um, but personally, I don't really watch the shows that I work on.
Do
To be
you
honest,
not?
I mean, no, because I was there, right? So like I know what happens.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, I mean, there may be like moments where I might watch certain episodes of a show of a season that I did, but like I don't really. I'm not deep diving into each episode because I was there. You know,
Yeah. And
so it doesn't
so
hit the same for me.
it doesn't, yeah, I get what you're saying. So, Reese, you're so multifaceted. The other thing that I noticed is that you travel quite a bit. You seem
Hmm.
to always be in another location. I see that
Hmm.
you've lived in Bali, in Cape Town, in Australia. If I were to ask you about the place or the country or the location that shaped you, would that be an automatic, okay, the US, because that's where I was born or grew up?
Oh, of
What is
course.
that for you? Hmm.
I mean, yeah, it would definitely be America because like that's where my roots are, and so
Hmm.
much of who I am is deep rooted into like Black American culture, right? Um, on a domestic level, but I think once I started traveling, that evolved me to an international level, and like that also helped to create who I am as well because I wouldn't be the same person had I stayed in America. So they both play a huge influence into who I am as a whole.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time because I was born in Jamaica, I grew up in Jamaica, it was all I knew. And then
Hmm.
in my kind of early mid 20s, I moved to the UK. And then all of a
Hmm.
sudden, my entire worldview was just challenged in ways that I couldn't even imagine. And without
Wow.
even being intentional about it, I found myself evolving in response to the environment that I was in. But you did
Yeah.
say that the person who you are at the very core has been shaped, yes, by being American. What is
Absolutely.
that person and who is that person?
I mean, I guess I see things through an American lens, which I try not to do sometimes, but it's like very hard to kind of like break out of that same cycle of just viewpoints, right? And that's why I think travel is so important because it kind of just it makes you see things from a different point of view. Um, but America, like like every country has its pros and cons, right? But America is a beautiful place, but does it need a lot of work? Absolutely. It needs a lot of work done at its core, at its center, at its a lot of groundwork done. But like when it comes to Black American culture, like that is what for me like means the most, and that has truly played an influential part in like my music taste, the way that I dress, my hair, the way I speak, my lingo. My whole swag is Black America. So
Yeah. And then I see where you were on holiday also with your nephews. And then you
yeah,
spoke about you don't want
yeah,
these
that was
black boys
awesome.
to be another statistic. And that really
Yes.
resonated for me as the mother of two black boys. Because after George Floyd, there were a lot of conversations about what it means to be black. And those conversations would have been different in the US and in the
Yeah.
UK because culturally it's just really different. So, for instance, I never used to buy hoodies for my sons because I thought about what stereotypically that represented.
Hmm.
And right now
Hmm.
I'm in a little bit of an odd position because my oldest son, he loves black culture. But this same
Hmm.
culture
Like Black American
stereotypically,
culture.
I think he just loves black. He just loves black culture
Okay.
and he embraces it.
How old
But
is
it
he?
also he's 15. But it
Hmm.
also means that he probably wants to have his hair a certain way, wherein I understand what that means from a cultural perspective, but I also appreciate that my black son going to school with his hair a certain way. And he left out this morning and he had on shorts under the trousers and the trousers is down here. And I'm saying, dude, you're going to school. So there's that conflict between me saying to him, I understand
Right.
that you love being black and you appreciate your blackness and you want to demonstrate what that means. But also, it's that battle between stereotypically how you are then perceived by virtue
Yep.
of showing up in certain spaces in a certain
Yep.
way. What is the role that you
Yep.
play in your nephew's life? And how do you manage that balance between embracing what it means to be black and what our culture is, but how sometimes the world perceives us?
Well, that's a very interesting question because when I took them to Europe this last summer, I took them with the intention to like show them something different than Black America and just
Mm,
just America in general, right?
yeah.
Because I remember my first time in Europe, I was 26 and I was in a hostel and I came across like all these 18-year-old, 19-year-old white kids from like all over the world. I'm just like, what are you doing in Europe at 18, right? And they're like, oh, my parents just sent me here for the
Oh,
summer, like
yeah.
just very
They just
cavalier,
go
just like
traveling.
what, like and that's like to me that was like so unheard of, right? And so I made a promise to myself that whoever comes up under me, I'm taking them to Europe. And so it just happened to be my nephews, right? So we planned the trip for like 2 years in advance, and we did. They had just graduated high school, so it was fresh out of high school, just turned 18, and they graduated in June. We went to Europe in August, so it was 2 months after high school graduation, and we did. We flew into London, and then we did Paris, and then Barcelona, right? And so I wanted them to see that there's so much more to America, so much more to life than just America.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they didn't notice, but at the time I was like really tracking like everything that they did. Like when I was with them, I was like observing them, right? I was like just taking notes, just mental notes, mental reminders about how they were interacting with the world, how they were interacting with each other, how they were perceiving things, just everything. And so on our very last night together, we were in Barcelona. I took them to this restaurant at the W. It's like this rooftop on the beach. It was beautiful, and I was like, well, so I brought you all here today because I have been, observing y'all, and I was like, and I've observed X, Y, and Z about you, and X, Y, Z about you, um, and these are my these this is my creative criticism from me to you about like what I think that what you can work on, and they received it very well, you know, and ironically enough there's two of them, and one of them he's very confident, very like sure of himself, um, but he's a little bit more reserved. And then the other one, he's he is very outgoing, but he is not as confident as I know he could be, right? So they both have what the other one lacks. And so I made that very clear that you guys work well together, right? But as black men, you guys have to come together and like lean on each other and you can learn from each other. And so the whole the whole trip for me bringing them to America to Europe was to show them that, there's more to life than life in America. There's more to life than just being working at Walgreens or working at a pharmacy, or you can go travel. Like this such a big world. And they really took to that. And I think that just me setting the example that this is possible made it possible for them, and it made it that much more believable for them.
Yeah.
Did
And
that
you,
answer your question?
no, in a sense, it has answered my question because I see that what you're trying to do is to expand their worldview. And that's so powerful because
Right.
I don't think anybody really thought about expanding my worldview growing up. But my worldview
Right.
was expanded because I was a voracious reader, right? So I
Yeah.
felt as though that was my escape from the world. I
Yeah.
knew where I was, but I knew that there was more to what I knew because I
Yeah.
experienced it in books. So that was how I
Yeah.
traveled.
Yeah.
Do you
Right.
think they got from the trip what you intended them to get from it?
Absolutely. So in Barcelona, which was our last stop, they both said they want to move to Europe.
Oh,
And I was like, my
wow.
job is done. My job is done.
Yeah,
They love London though. London was their absolute favorite until Barcelona. Barcelona just like won them over, but I think they will live in London just because they speak English and it's easier for them to like adapt.
yeah,
And it was really just beautiful to like see them evolve with just in 2-3 weeks time. They really became different people. It was really beautiful to see. So
yeah,
yes, I definitely accomplished what I set out to do, and I'm very proud of that.
yeah. And what about your own evolution? Because you're 35, if you don't mind me sharing your age.
No,
And
that's fine. Yeah.
in our life, we go through so many different journeys and we're evolving. How did you get to the point where you are now? Tell me about little Reese, probably at home, what was growing up like, Reese the teenager, Reese embarking on the world of work. What was that evolution for you?
Well, I come from a mom who had me at 14,
Hmm.
so I was actually put up for adoption initially. Um, that's another story for another time. But once my mom like held me, she was like, absolutely not. But because she was put in a group home, she was put in a group home for like teenage girls. So that's where I was born at, was in the group home. And her and my dad kind of like had this like plan to like kind of get me from the system, and they succeeded. And she um, she did she had to do it, and kept me with her. So because she was a minor, of course she was 14. So we were took in by her grandparents, who are my great grandparents, and that's who pretty much like raised the both of us. So like I came from a very loving background, a very loving village. Like there was nothing that I wanted for. I had a great childhood. Everything that you could ever ask for. I've always felt loved. I never feel like I missed out on anything. To be fair, and I just remember I have very good childhood memories, and at the time I didn't know that, but like looking back on it, and like looking back, like looking at how my friends grew up and how
Hmm.
they are with their parents, I realized that I was very lucky to grow up the way that I grew up. Um, Now, of course, my mom had me at 14, so she had a lot of growing up to do as well. That's just what it is. But she was always a mother, and that I always appreciated. And she was always on me about being a man, especially like when I hit 16. It was a wrap. She was like, "You're going to go get you a job because I'm not raising no bums. I'm raising a man, and this is what that is." So, she was always very tough with me, and at the time I couldn't stand her for it. To be fair, but it truly did shape who I am.
Yeah.
And I had this moment when I was in South Africa doing this show a couple years ago where a girl. She was like, you can really tell when a man was raised by a good strong woman. And I was like, hmm. And so I thought about that for a while. And I was like, you know what? Like my mom was really hard on me, and she like made me walk from work to home at night when I was a teenager, and which was like a 2 kilometer walk. Well, she could have come and picked me up because she had a car, but she didn't. Right? I was like, but because she did that, it really taught me that you got to get it how you live. You got to get it on your own, and don't let nothing stop you. And because of that, I have traveled the world by myself, right? So I said all that to say that I had a really great upbringing. I just didn't know it at the time, and um, yeah, and like just growing up, I was always very creative. I was always a creative. Like I said, my earliest memories are of music, especially with my mom. And I was writing screenplays at 13. This was back in the day before we had like real internet.
Yeah,
This
you
was
had
like
your pen and your paper, you're writing that screenplay.
literally, yes. I wrote a whole screenplay, based off of "Do the Right Thing" from Spike Lee. I wrote a whole screenplay at 13 just based off of that. And I said all that to say that I never went to school for screenplay writing, but I have won awards for my screenplay writing.
Wow.
So I was always just a creative. I play piano by ear, not so much
Do
anymore.
you?
I used to, yeah. I used to, yes. I used to
Okay
do,
then.
yeah, because once my mom saw that I had an interest in music, she bought me a piano when I was 13, and that's how it all started. And since that moment, I was just always, you know, and I learned to play by ear. I haven't played as much in my adult years, but as a kid, I was a prodigy. For real, I was really good. Yeah. Um, and yeah, and then I went to college for TV for not TV production, but for film production actually. But I couldn't finish because I didn't have enough funds, so I dropped out, and that's when I started making jewelry. And so that's when you came across the whole jewelry thing, and like
Yeah.
that was my bread and butter for at least 2 years. And then I had a cousin. He was like, there's this school in Florida called Full Sail that I think that you would really enjoy, and I looked into it, and it looked really like interesting, and it looked like it was something that I could afford finally. And then I had another cousin. She was like, if you want to do music, you have to be around people that do music. And I was like, oh. Then it was like a light bulb moment, right? And I was like, it's really that simple. And so with that, I went to school for music, and I got my degree in music. And that same school got me my first job in television.
Yeah. You're really tenacious and you've got such a compelling story. You have a story to tell. If you were supposed
Yeah.
to be doing that and telling your story, who would be the main characters in your story?
Oh, definitely my mom, my brothers, because
Mm-hmm.
my brothers are hilarious, and I love them. And we just have such a good bond. We always have. My granny, because she is just like my everything. She's my great grandmother, but she's 95, and she's like still very much like
Ah,
herself.
yes.
Like she still travels, like she's still sharp, like she has a very smart mouth.
Why am I not
like
surprised?
like she has not lost her wit whatsoever. She slowed down a bit, physically, yes, but like her mind is still very much who I've always wanted to be. So definitely my mom, my granny, my brothers, my aunt Rita, because she just like loved me the way that I need to be loved as a kid. I'm a very my love language is physical touch. She just always hugged me and loved on me and kissed on me. Um, my
And
aunt
that's very
Kanisha, so
rare
it's so many,
sometimes.
so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah, that love language being physical touch is so rare sometimes in black families
Yeah,
because I remember like my I don't remember my mother really hugging me that much. And she's very loving, but she's just
yeah,
not a hugger. And so
yeah.
my
I get it.
boys, like when they try to hug me, I'm like, leave me alone. You're touching me.
No, see, like my mom, she was more like that with my baby brother, but with me and my middle brother, not so much. But she is loving. Like she's a very emotional,
Yeah,
like she's
yeah,
very
yeah.
emotionally intelligent. But like she's not the lovey dovey kissing on you. She's not that. But I had aunts who were, so I never liked any of that. I had aunts who would kiss me on the lips. Like it was just something that I grew up with. Where if my mom didn't give it to me, I got it from my aunts or my uncles. So I
Hmm.
never feel like I missed out on anything, honestly.
Yeah. And you've touched on some of the adversity that you've gone through. What I find is really interesting is that you don't seem to be the type of person who fixates on the tough times. And I saw that in some of your posts. Actually, let's go back
Hmm.
to 2020 because
Oh
you
shit.
said, oh no, shall I leave 2020 out?
Oh, what a year. It's the worst year of my life.
You said that. You said 2020, one of your roughest years.
See, told you. So you know I'm not lying. It
Yeah.
was
What?
awful.
Yeah. What made it so tough, and how did you get past it to get to this point?
Because it made it tough because I'm a man with a plan always. So I plan my life. I have to have structure. I have to know what I'm doing at all times. And if I don't, then I just like kind of like lose my balance and like just lose myself in a way. And 2020, I had it all mapped out, but then of course COVID came, and so that just like switched. It just when I say it switched everything and it's just flipped it upside down. Like it just still pisses me off because it was so tough. But like I had this plan to like come from Australia because I was living in Australia at the time. I left Australia in January 2020 with the intention to go back home to the States and work for about 6 months in LA in television and then go to Europe for the summer to Glastonbury, actually, right? And then I would that was the plan. And then I was going to spend the summer in Europe and then come back to the States and work until January and then fly back to Australia to do my second year of working holiday visa that I had, right? But then March came and then I had to figure it out because that wasn't a plan. That wasn't even an option anymore. And I came back from Australia with like about 7K, which was fine. Like that was enough to like survive until I got my next TV gig. But then that next gig didn't come because the industry shut down. So then I was resorted to work. I had to drive Uber Eats, and so I did that for a solid. Let me see, probably from March until November. Yeah, March until November. Well, no, I had one job in between, and it was a 2 week gig, and that was it. And it was tough, and just like having the rug ripped from under you and just being financially dependent on not financially dependent because I still was making money with Uber, but like just not having the means the way that I wanted to, the way that I was used to having, which it was very, very tough. And then not only that, I was 30 years old. I was on my grandma's air mattress in the living room. Like it was just like how did you end up here? How did you end up at 30 years old on an air mattress at your grandma's house? Like,
Mhm.
what? It was tough. But then God said, you know what? Enough is enough. And a girl who I had worked with probably 2 years prior reached out to me. She was like, hey, are you available to be an associate producer for this Disney show? This was in November. I was like, are you kidding me? Absolutely. um, And then in December, the job started, and I was back on my way, and everything was kind of just rolled into place again. But
Yeah.
from March until the end of November was just like, man, it was tough. It was so tough, and I was waiting for money from the government that never came. It was like 6 months overdue, and when it finally did come, it came the same week that I started my job with Disney. So everything
Yeah.
just like all happened at once, and I realized in that moment that everything happens either all at once or not at all.
Hmm.
And that's what it was for me.
Yeah. And what did you learn about yourself in that time? Because I find that during the times of greatest adversity is when we have those sometimes light bulb moments about ourselves or about
Yeah.
life in general.
Yeah, it taught me that I was resilient. A, but B, I think most importantly, it taught me that to always be aware of my finances, to never let my finances get below a certain level, ever, 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 ever. Because I don't want to ever feel like I can't support myself or I have to live in my grandma's house. I don't want to ever have to feel like that again. Um, and so I'm just like super aware now of my finances at all times. I started investing. I started a high yield savings account, and like now I'm fine. But like man, I think I had to go through that. Otherwise, I wouldn't be where I am now financially.
Yeah. So, Reese, one of the other things that I saw is that you said that your goal is to heal before having children. So your children don't have to heal from having you as a parent. Now, this really hit me at the core, right? Because I I always have this philosophy that we're all just really messed up human beings
We
who
are.
go on to mess up other human beings. So I'm
Yeah.
not even gonna delude myself into thinking that I'm not traumatizing my boys in trying to parent in the best way that I can, because nobody gave me
Yeah.
a manual for this, right?
There is no
What
manual.
is what is it that you're healing from exactly? And what does a healed version of Reese look like?
Oh, I mean, I think everyone has, childhood trauma. I think for
Hmm.
me personally, learning, learning patience. I came from like my love you, mom, but my mom is very impatient, right? Like she does not. My mom does not have patience, and neither do I, right? And so that's definitely something that I've learned from her. Um, and neither does my grandmother, So it definitely I see where it stems from. Because ironically, my great grandmother who raised me has all the patience in the world,
Yes.
but I picked up the traits from my mom and my grandma who have zero patience, and so I'm definitely learning how to be more patient. Um, what else? Let me think. I think that's the biggest thing.
But
I
you
think
know
learning
what?
how to be
Isn't
more
learning how to be more? Go on, no?
learn how to be more loving, like just more like more affectionate. Like
Uh-huh.
because I didn't grow up with those. I didn't grow up, all the time with hugs and kisses, and I do want to be that for my kids, right? Um, I do want to be that for my kids, and I also want to work on just like not being easily irritated.
Well, you're speaking
Because that's
about
that.
all the demons that I have because I am
Yeah,
very impatient. However, and this is me making excuses, but it's fine. I know what my flaws are, all right? I
yeah,
find that this the very thing that is my flaw is also the thing that makes me effective and efficient in what I do. So
yeah,
because I am impatient, it means that I really get things done at a pace that is sometimes startling to other people. Because I don't have
yeah,
time to wait on you to figure your stuff
yeah,
out, right? You need to figure it
yeah,
out right now. But it
yeah,
means that
yeah,
I am so efficient, but it also means that I'm a pain in the ass to live with. Because if I tell you to
yeah.
move that thing from there to there, I don't
Do
want
it
to be
now.
waiting 10 hours afterwards for you to do that.
Period.
I expect
Exactly.
things to
Exactly.
happen and happen
Yep.
right now. So
Yep.
I'm learning how to reconcile my strengths, which are sometimes my weaknesses at the same time, because
Mm,
two things can be the same. And
for
I'm
sure.
also looking at the things that are perhaps my weaknesses, but trying to reframe them and seeing the
Hmm.
beauty in some of the not so beautiful parts of me.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I agree with that because I'm definitely one of those people who I grasp things very quickly,
Hmm.
and I always have. And so it irritates me when people don't grasp things as quickly as I feel like they should grasp them, right? And I know that's such a fault, but I am working on it, and I think I'm a lot better than I was 10 years ago. But it's something
Hmm.
that I want to be fully free from before I have kids because I don't want to be, that kind of dad that's just always like on their kids' back, and I just don't want to be like that kind of dad. I just don't. I don't.
Yeah. And then, of course, when I was on your profile, I saw that picture of you in the nude, and you were like,
Oh
it's the first picture on your page. But
yeah.
what struck me, because I think I always speak about. I was having this conversation with my youngest son yesterday. Don't judge me, parents, because y'all judge, and I'm not an orthodox parent. And I said to him, there's a difference between sexuality and sensuality. And my mom was probably there in the background
Mm,
thinking, what is it that you're saying to this child? But in any
mm,
case,
I
the
love it.
point is, you also said that, you know, your body is not going to be as tight and right as it is, number one. So you're going to take this picture. But the other thing is, you were also quite worried about what your colleagues might say or how you might be perceived in a professional
Yeah.
context. And I was like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Even when I was doing this podcast, I thought, there are conversations that I might have that I'm going to worry about. But then I had to challenge myself because who are we trying to impress? Why are we
Yeah.
afraid to show different elements of who we
Yeah.
are? Why are we muting our voices? Why are we kind of almost clothing ourselves in
Hmm.
what society tells us it needs to be? What was your
Hmm.
thought process when you decided, here's this picture of me in the buff, and it's very tasteful. There's nothing that you see
Yeah,
really
yeah,
at
yeah.
all. Not really. There's nothing you
Right,
see at all.
right.
But
No.
how did you get to that place where you're like, A, I'm going to do this photo shoot, and B, I am going to put it on Instagram on my profile, which is open, so anybody in the world can see it.
Yeah. Well, so actually, the idea I was in Berlin with my best friend. He's from Germany, so I was visiting him, and it was his idea because he's a photographer. And initially, like my initial reaction was absolutely not. It was just no, right? It was just no. I don't want to be new, especially in front of you, for one. And then the thought of like where is this going to go? And so my initial thought was no. My initial reaction was no. And then I sat with it for like maybe a day or two. I was like, you know what? I'm young. I'm hot. Like, why not?
Mhm.
Just do it, just so I can say that I did it, if nothing else. And the next day we set it up and we did it. But ironically, when I posted it, I had took that picture probably a month or two prior. But I was
Mhm.
battling so much internally with like, should I post it or should I not? And so I put a poll up on Instagram actually on my story, and I was asking like, I made this. I have a new picture. Should I post it? Like, yes or no? And so many people said no. I'm just like, see, I knew it. But I was just like, you know what? And that's when I was like writing out my thoughts, and those thoughts became the caption. And I was like, I won't be this young again. I won't be this fit again. And I'll look back on this 40 years from now and say, I'm glad that I did it. And so this is here it is. And I think most importantly, what I wanted to get across was that me posting a semi nude picture has no reflection on how I can do my job, period.
Absolutely. To what extent do the opinions of people, whether these are people who are close to you or people who you don't know, to what extent do external opinions impact your actions or the things that you choose to do?
I mean, I think people love to say that other people's opinions don't matter, but they do, and
Oh,
people do.
yes.
We do care.
We
We do care
care.
what the world thinks. Period. Otherwise, you wouldn't dress how you dress. Like you wouldn't, and you care just a little bit, and that's okay. Like that's okay. It's what sometimes it can be healthy if you use it in the right direction, right? Um, and so I think for me, like um, opinions, they matter to an extent, but I don't let it like deter me from doing what I want to do. I'm going to do it anyway, right? So even though I battled with the initial post, I still did it because that's what I wanted to do. So
Yeah.
I may consider it, but like at the end of the day, I want to do what I want to do. And that's just what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you at the point in your life, financially, spiritually, mentally, that you thought you would be at 35?
Hmm, I don't know where I thought I'd be at 35, but I know that I'm not mad at where I'm at. Do I wish I was in? Could it be? I don't want to say better, but could it be different? For sure, but I'm definitely not mad at where I am because I think I'm in a very good space in comparison to my peers.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, it took me a while to not look at where I am in comparison to others, but look at where I am in comparison
right,
to where I want to be. I don't know if
right.
that makes sense, but
Yeah, that's
I
fair. And I shouldn't say in comparison to others because that's not,
yeah,
everyone has their own trajectory. But yeah, no, I agree with that. I agree with
yeah.
that.
I think
Yeah,
yeah, I think what I've learned is that there is so much that I have to be grateful for. So it
hmm,
is about really looking at my life and not looking at what I don't have or what I can do better or should do more of.
right,
It's
right,
saying, man, where I am right now is a damn good place. However, it doesn't mean
yeah,
that I don't have ambition to go to those
right,
places. It just means that I
absolutely,
can appreciate that the point that I am at right now is a
yeah,
good
yeah.
point.
Do I wish I wouldn't say that I'm content, but I do know that I have more things to do. Like I'm not done. Like I'm nowhere near where
Yes.
near the things that I want to accomplish. So until I get those things checked off my list, then I'm going to keep striving. But I will say that I'm not mad at where I'm at by any means.
Yeah. And you have done so much. What else is there left for you to do?
Open up my hostel, start my record label. I have a production company that I want to continue to build upon and create scripted TV shows and create films, travel films, primarily. And those are like my main three things, I think. Yeah. Hostel, music record label, and TV production, film production. And
Yeah,
just
I
thrive in those areas.
I understand the latter too. What's the rationale for the hostel? Why the hostel?
Oh, because so my name, Reese, the way it's spelled, it means traveler in Dutch. Fun fact. And so it's just a part of my DNA. It's just who I am. And I've always loved hostels. Hostels have literally changed my life. I have met some of my best friends in life in hostels around the
Yeah,
world. I'm in a hostel right now, in Melbourne, Australia. So I've always wanted a hostel. I just don't know where, but I do know that I always want some form of travel in my life. And why not have a hostel? I want a chain of Where's Reese hostels. I'm
you know
going to have a
what?
chain of Where's Reese hostels.
What's in a name, eh? I wonder if your mom knew when she settled on
Yeah.
Reese that you'd be this traveler who's like, right, I'm going here,
Yeah.
I'm going there, I'm going
Yeah.
everywhere. Um,
Yeah.
my final question for you is one that I'm probably asking myself and answering as I speak to you. You said, I love who I am, and you love who you're becoming even more. Who are
Mhm.
you becoming?
I think I am becoming a man who I can be proud of. When
Hmm.
I am proud of myself now, but just looking back on how my adulthood started, it was not pretty. I did some things that I wasn't so proud of, and I was around the wrong group of people, and so just looking back on who I was 15 years ago at 20, as opposed to who I am now, I am truly proud of my trajectory and my decisions. Could I have made even better decisions? Yeah, sure, of course, but I am definitely proud of the things that I've done. And if I was to die tomorrow, I know that I will leave such a footprint on this earth, and I'm okay with that. Not
Yeah.
that I want to die tomorrow, because I don't by any means, but let me put that on some
Let's
wood,
knock on wood.
for real. But I know that I have impacted so many people in such a positive way, and I've given so much creativity to this world and that's what I want to do. My mantra now is to keep investing, keep creating, and keep healthy. And as long as I'm doing those things, I'm happy. I'm content.
Yeah. Well, you know
Yeah,
what, Reese? It's been such an absolute pleasure speaking to you. I,
likewise.
I don't think, and I've said this before, but for me, people can say anything, but actions are really what speak to me. And as I said, I messaged you yesterday.
Hmm.
Today, we're on this platform and we're recording.
Hmm.
You are in Australia, Melbourne, Australia. I'm in London. So the time difference is crazy. Anybody who knows
Yeah.
me knows that I can't do maths at all. So I'm kind of like, well, if you're there tomorrow and it's this type of hours apart, like what time are we even going to meet? But you made it
Yeah.
happen. You don't know me from a can of paint. And you
Yeah.
were just so open to coming on this platform, to sharing your story.
Yeah.
And that means so much.
Yeah.
You
Of
are
course.
such light. Just keep shining. And I can't wait to
Thank you.
see you accomplish all those things that you set out for yourself. It's going to
Thank you.
happen. You've put
Yeah.
it out there. So it's got
Yes.
no chance to just hide away and die because
Yes.
it's not got any light. It's out there. It's
Yes.
out in the open. So it has to happen. If people want to continue supporting you, and you do a lot of things, okay? But if people
I
want
do.
to support you, what does that look like for you?
Um, like, follow, and share. If you like what I do, share with your people. Each one, if each person that is captivated by what I do, and if you share that with someone else and they keep sharing this, it's just all word of mouth, and that's how it happens. Just keep sharing, keep supporting, and I will be sure to keep creating.
Well, thank you so very much, Reese. As Reese has said, keep sharing, give him feedback. so that he
Yes.
knows what's hitting, what do you like, what don't you like so much, and share. You just share, tell people about what
Just
he's
share.
doing.
Yes.
I'm gonna go now and try and read one of your adult novels. Because why not? But absolutely, thank you so
It's
very
such a
much,
good
Reese.
novel.
Is it?
Yeah.
What's it about?
It's so well. It's a love story told through a tragedy, and the tragedy is Hurricane Katrina, and it's told through like my lens because I was like 17 when it happened, so it's like loosely based on my experience once people from New Orleans came to Houston, and it's a really good book. It's a really good book. I wrote it when
Okay.
I was 16 actually, so
Really?
yeah, I was 16. I wrote it as a movie at first, and then I turned it into a film, into a book when I was like 24, 25. Yeah,
Nice. So
yeah.
I'm gonna go and check that out because I love a good
Yeah,
book. So thank
yeah.
you very much, Reese. As he said,
Thank
check him
you.
out. You can find him on all platforms and continue to
Yes,
follow and support How Did You Get There? We appreciate every single person
yes,
who's listening or watching. Thank you. And
yes.
from
Thank
myself and
you.
Reese, bye bye.
Thank you guys. See y'all.